Angola erupts and China's economic decline. Signs of crisis. In recent days, Angola, a nation long recognized for its abundant oil resources, has become the epicenter of violent riots with facilities operated by Chinese entities targeted as primary objectives. Simultaneously, in China, alarming poverty statistics and discontented voices from former soldiers are raising questions about the country's stability. From the chaotic streets of Angola to internal disputes in China, the broader picture reveals a series of interconnected events, blending international instability with domestic economic crisis. Riots in Angola. Chinese facilities become targets. On a quiet evening in southwestern Angola, the serene atmosphere was abruptly shattered by the clamor of crowds and chaotic noises. Thousands took to the streets, engaging in looting of shops and businesses, with Chinese-operated facilities clearly singled out. The incident gained attention with a video uploaded on July 28, capturing a group of aggressive individuals attempting to break into a Chinese commercial site. The footage showed them using a workbench as a tool, smashing the door with relentless determination. The head of the local area, known as Chinatown, confirmed that shops managed by Chinese operators were ruthlessly looted. According to reports, it took less than 30 seconds for the mob to clear out an entire store, leaving behind a scene of devastation. Based on gathered information, at least 12 facilities suffered damage during the riots. Another video depicted the disorder as local employees were forcibly evicted from the Chinatown area. The person filming explained that this expulsion was intended to prevent them from uniting against the crowd, with main entrances locked and only a small exit available. Social media comments on these videos reflected confusion and anger. One user likened the situation to a horror zombie movie, questioning whether schools would continue hiring people from these areas. Another comment called for raising a flag, possibly as a sign of despair or resistance. On the same day, Mr. Wang Xinjun, a representative of the China Peaceful Unification Promotion Association in Zimbabwe, reported that a Chinese citizen had become a victim of the escalating tensions, heightening concerns about the safety of the Chinese community abroad. China's economic decline, over 1 billion living in poverty. While Angola grapples with chaos, China faces an equally grim economic landscape. The latest official statistics reveal that approximately 1.3 billion people in the country earn less than 5,000 yen, around $700 per month. This figure, despite originating from government data, has shocked many and sparked widespread debate. With a population exceeding 1.4 billion, it suggests that the majority are struggling to surpass the basic poverty threshold, widening the gap between rich and poor. A social media user expressed skepticism about the patriotism of those who frequently advocate nationalism, referred to as Five Mayo or Little Pinks, when confronted with this reality. They questioned whether these individuals feel ashamed upon learning the true economic state of the nation. The scarcity of job opportunities and rising living costs have driven millions of families into despair, forcing them to rely on meager subsidies or roam the streets in search of survival. Armed Forces Day discontent from the military. August 1st, known as China's Armed Forces Day, is typically an occasion for the government to showcase military strength. However, amid the economic downturn, voices of discontent from former soldiers have emerged, casting doubt on the military's combat readiness. A retired soldier who left service nearly 20 years ago shared in a video that he has received no benefits since retiring, not even a consoling message this year. With a sarcastic tone, he targeted current soldiers receiving Armed Forces Day bonuses, demanding they take the front line if war breaks out. Social media comments further fueled the debate. One user argued that only those earning over 70,000 yen monthly could be considered patriotic, implying that most citizens are too impoverished to care about national issues. Another more forceful opinion claimed that the Chinese government has run out of funds and is on the brink of collapse. They linked this to the looting of Chinese assets abroad, such as in Angola, as evidence of widespread weakness. The question arises whether those in the poverty statistics over 1 billion people would be willing to sacrifice their lives for the country if war erupted. Some social media users mocked the idea of a conflict with Taiwan or other nations, asserting that the military lacks the resources and public support to engage. These reactions not only reflect a loss of faith in the government, but also highlight the stark contrast between patriotic rhetoric and the harsh realities faced by the population. The immigration authorities are actively apprehending individuals lacking valid identification documents. Attention is now focused on areas like 2nd and 4th Avenue, where residents are urged to carry proper ID or risk immediate removal. A noticeable increase in detentions of Chinese nationals by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement (ICE) has raised alarm within local communities. Toward the end of July, news broke of ICE operations targeting Asian grocery stores in Buffalo, New York, and nearby Rochester County. Witnesses reported that on the morning of July 30th, ICE agents cordoned off a supermarket, meticulously checking the IDs of shoppers and employees alike. Several Spanish-speaking immigrants were detained on site. A Chinese shopper described the scene as chaotic, with fear silencing those present, as officers scrutinized documents detaining anyone whose paperwork didn't meet standards. Beyond ID checks, agents confiscated electronic devices, business records, and employee files, including payroll documents. Reports indicate these searches were not routine, but part of a broader investigation into the businesses themselves. Similar raids occurred almost simultaneously at another Asian market in Rochester, suggesting a coordinated effort. The ICE office in Buffalo has been vocal about its recent activities, frequently updating the public on arrests and deportations of Chinese immigrants. On June 11th, authorities announced the removal of a Chinese man convicted of manslaughter who had been issued a final deportation order in March and was expelled from the U.S. on June 3rd. The next day, ICE reported the arrest of another Chinese individual convicted of aggravated assault now awaiting deportation. An ICE spokesperson emphasized that deporting convicted felons enhances community safety. Chinese-owned businesses, including restaurants, have also come under scrutiny. In late June, the owner of a Chinese restaurant in Camden, New York, was detained. ICE revealed that this individual had entered the U.S. in 1990, using a fraudulent visa, ignored a 1999 deportation order, and now faces imminent removal. For security reasons, further details were withheld. Notably, long-term residents are not exempt from these enforcement actions. On June 16th, a Chinese immigrant who had operated a restaurant in upstate New York for 25 years was arrested. This individual, who entered the U.S. illegally in 1993, at age 18 was ordered deported in 1994 after being caught with forged documents. Despite this, he remained in the U.S., changed his identity, and established a business in a small town. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act's reinstatement of removal clause, those who re-enter illegally after a deportation order face immediate enforcement of the original ruling without new hearings or eligibility for most relief options such as bail. Reports also highlight ICE activity in Brooklyn's 8th Avenue and Bensonhurst neighborhoods, where agents have been observed monitoring Chinese supermarkets. A local landlord reported that an undocumented tenant was apprehended by ICE agents waiting outside his residence, sparking widespread concern. In response, community members have mobilized, sharing resources like lawyer recommendations, translator contacts, and advice from experienced immigration attorneys. Guidance includes remaining calm if approached, presenting a passport or green card copy, and requesting legal counsel. ICE's enforcement has intensified, with Acting Director Todd Lyons stating in a July 20th CBS News interview that the agency targets all undocumented individuals regardless of criminal history. Lyons also stressed increased scrutiny of employers hiring unauthorized workers. Recent operations in Nebraska, Louisiana, and California resulted in hundreds of arrests, including minors at workplaces. Lyons affirmed that companies employing undocumented workers would face consequences as these actions address not only immigration violations, but also issues like forced labor, and human trafficking. While prioritizing serious criminals, ICE arrests others encountered during operations, particularly in sanctuary cities that limit cooperation with federal authorities, leading to more community-based enforcement and collateral detentions. According to the Migration Policy Institute, the 2024 fiscal year saw nearly 236,000 immigration encounters involving individuals from China and other Asian nations, a sharp rise from prior years. U.S. Customs and Border Protection data shows over 24,000 Chinese citizens were detained at the southern border in 2024, an 8,000% increase from 2021, surpassing the entire 2023 total in just 6 months. Under the Biden administration, ICE focused on serious criminals' national security threats and recent border crossers. However, since President Trump's return in January 2025, enforcement has broadened significantly. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller proposed a daily arrest goal of 3,000, though this target remains unmet. Congress has allocated substantial funding to bolster deportation efforts, amplifying ICE's reach. This wave of enforcement has deeply unsettled Chinese communities, though it stems from specific legal grounds often tied to criminal activity among undocumented immigrants. For instance, on July 8th and May 29th, ICE detained 2 Chinese nationals in Potomac, New York, accused of defrauding elderly Americans of $42,000 and $20,000 through scams. Both are held without bail pending deportation. In May, 2 others were arrested in Rhode Island and New York for a transnational fraud and money laundering scheme targeting seniors involving over $5 million. They held expired visas and remain in custody. On March 24th, a Chinese national was detained in New York for acting as an unregistered foreign agent, potentially linked to espionage, after violating his legal entry terms. In February, a Chinese woman in Massachusetts who overstayed a 2019 tourist visa was arrested after being identified as a fugitive, wanted for embezzlement fraud and drug trafficking in her home country. ICE's Boston director emphasized that such operations target foreign criminals posing community risks with collaboration from local law enforcement. Investigations into Chinese supermarkets and restaurants reveal patterns of illegal employment practices such as falsifying employment forms, charging illicit fees, or aiding smuggling networks to secure jobs for undocumented workers. In Minneapolis, 2 Chinese restaurant owners pleaded guilty to employing over 10 unauthorized workers facing fines and imprisonment. In Washington, D.C., ICE's audits of over 100 restaurants in May triggered labor shortages as workers avoided jobs out of fear. These cases often involve serious charges from fraud and money laundering to unregistered foreign agency. Some speculate that heightened enforcement against Chinese nationals may reflect broader concerns about their growing negative perception in the U.S., fueled by rising telecom fraud and property crimes. The Federal Communications Commission has warned of Chinese-language robocalls impersonating authorities to steal personal data. In March, 2 Chinese nationals were arrested in Oregon for credit card fraud, and in summer 2024, 5 others in California and Nevada were indicted for a $27 million elder fraud scheme. Drug-related crimes are also a factor. In July 2024, the Department of Justice indicted a Chinese national for importing fentanyl precursor chemicals from China capable of producing millions of lethal doses. In October 8, Chinese chemical companies and their employees faced charges in Florida for distributing synthetic opioids. In January 2025, 2 Chinese executives were convicted in New York for smuggling precursor chemicals and money laundering, a case significant for U.S.-China drug enforcement talks. Reports also suggest Chinese funds are laundered through brokers for Mexican cartels and fentanyl networks, complicating enforcement. Beyond fraud and drugs, Chinese nationals have been linked to human trafficking and pathogen smuggling. In June, 2 were indicted in Detroit for smuggling dangerous biological materials, visa fraud, and false statements. Earlier, ICE's Homeland Security investigations dismantled a Chinese-run trafficking syndicate in New York, arresting over 20 members. Immigration attorney Jen Trend Drew argues that the Trump administration's policies enforce existing laws rather than unfairly targeting immigrants. The government's duty, she says, is to uphold legal standards, and deporting those who entered illegally is a fundamental responsibility. After years of lax enforcement, stricter measures were inevitable, though they cause social disruption. Drew clarifies that ICE prioritizes those with criminal records or prior deportation orders, not legal asylum seekers or valid visa holders. Among the estimated 390,000 undocumented Chinese immigrants in the U.S., some fled persecution. For example, a woman in San Francisco pseudonym Jenny escaped China's one-child policy enforcement, worked as a nanny, and later married a U.S. citizen to stabilize her status. Others, like Uyghurs fleeing China's re-education camps and surveillance in Xinjiang, seek refuge from religious and ethnic persecution, as noted by UN human rights reports. Chen Wei-ming, a sculptor and founder of Free Sculpture Park in California, advises Chinese dissidents seeking freedom not to panic. Their activism, such as protests at Chinese consulates, may strengthen their asylum cases if arrested. He criticizes the Biden administration's lenient border policies as unsustainable, straining healthcare and welfare resources. While acknowledging humanitarian concerns, he argues that taxpayer rights must not be undermined. ICE arrests, though perceived as abrupt, are grounded in legal violations like overstayed visas, criminal records, or falsified documents. Sociologists warn that navigating this high-pressure enforcement requires understanding policies, maintaining valid ID, and knowing procedural rights to protect oneself and family.